Hello, and welcome back to today's lectures for scientific ethics. What we're going to be looking at today and going into Friday is a little bit more about trying to figure out a way in which we can kind of replace cells or tissues or organs within an individual, because we've looked at the organ donation system, and there are limitations to that. We have limitations in the availability of organs. We've got huge ethical concerns kind of associated with the procurement and the delivery of organs. And what we've seen is that, at least at this point, with this limited supply of organs, we have a broken system. We have a system that isn't working. We've got people dying on the waiting list. And regardless of what criteria we use to try to figure out who it is that's going to get that organ, we've got a system that's biased in place. Regardless of the criteria we use, we're going to be excluding somebody. We're going to be putting somebody at the front of the line, and we're going to be putting somebody at the back of the line. And I can almost guarantee you that the person that's at the back of the line is not going to be happy about that. And they're going to be arguing that the system isn't fair. And in reality, it's not fair. It's biased against some individuals just because of the inherent system that's in place. So what we need to do is try to figure out a better way to do this. We need to try to figure out a way in which we can kind of improve or repair damaged or dying or dead cells, tissues, and organs within a patient without being dependent upon having an organ or having a tissue that we can procure either by a living organ donation or a cadaveric organ donation from a dead individual. And so what we're going to look at are going to be stem cells. And stem cells have got lots and lots of publicity over the last almost 35 years now. Lots of excitement about them, lots of potential for using them within the body, but still a lot that we don't understand. We've made huge advances over the last 35 years, but it's still not quite to where we need to be to go through and use that 3D printer from a couple lectures ago and build these organs that we need. So let's start talking about what stem cells are and what they're not, and what stem cells can potentially do for the body as we're looking at them. So stem cells are going to be a group of unspecialized cells. So they're going to be, if you want to think about it, kind of immature, kind of generic cells that you can find within the body. And the most important thing about these stem cells is because they're kind of generic, because they're unspecialized, they're capable of self-renewal. And so we've got kind of a stem cell over here. And what we can see is that this stem cell can continue to divide and produce lots and lots of copies of these stem cells. In our adult body, we have very few of these stem cells. Most of the adult cells in our body aren't generic. They're going to be relatively specialized. And so you can have skin cells within your body, which are very good at producing more skin cells. And so you're riding a skateboard down the street, which I don't do because I'm not coordinated enough. But say you're riding a skateboard, you fall, you get a road rash, you scrape the skin kind of along your knees, your elbows, or if it's really bad, other regions of your body as well. And you take a look at that, you've scraped off the surface of your skin, you've got blood exposed, you've got hopefully no internal body organs or anything like that, but you've got the underlying tissues. Now, as long as it wasn't too bad a wipeout, what's going to happen is your skin cells are going to divide kind of around that region, and they're going to grow out, and they're going to cover up that scrape that you have. Now, if it's really severe, you may end up with a scar, but for most individuals, just simple scrapes and cuts and things like that are going to heal relatively easily because you've got cells within your skin that are able to divide and produce other skin cells. Now, the problem is that doesn't occur in all regions of the body. You can't, damage a region in your brain and have, new brain cells, neurons kind of grow out and replace that. In most cases, you can't have a heart attack, kill off, portions of your heart and have, the heart cells grow out and kind of reestablish and repair that region. And so the skin is somewhat specialized. There are other regions in the body that can do that, but skin cells can produce more skin cells. As I talked about earlier, liver cells under the right circumstances can produce more liver cells as long as they're not diseased in some way. The thing with these stem cells is you've got these stem cells that we can continue to grow many times in the laboratory setting, and they grow and they produce more stem cells. So they've got lots and lots of these cells that we can study, that we can use. But what's important about these stem cells is that under the proper conditions, and many times we're learning what those proper conditions are in the laboratory, we can take these stem cells and produce, instead of producing lots and lots of these undifferentiated, generic, kind of unspecialized cells, we can kind of push them into a maturation process where they become specialized. And so we can take these stem cells, grow them under the right conditions, and produce some of those nerve cells, those neurons, or push them in the right direction and produce some cardiac muscle cells that we can then inject into a heart and potentially potentially treat a damaged region of a heart. So these stem cells have the potential to be biological raw materials for repair and growth. If we can understand these stem cells, we can produce what we need to treat these diseases of dead and dying cells or damaged organs without needing to take the cells or the organs from a donor. So what we need to do then, and scientists are working on this, is try to understand what it is that goes from these unspecialized cells, from these generic cells, into that specialization. And the body does this normally during development. So you start out with a fertilized egg, and very, very quickly, you end up with, 9 months later, roughly, a newborn infant that, looks human. It's got skin and eyes and nose, a tongue. You look inside their bodies, and they've got all of their different organs that are still developing, but you've got all these specialized cells instead of generic cells. And so along that normal development process, those unspecialized, those generic cells became specialized into heart muscle cells, and skin cells, and brain neuron cells. And so the idea is that if we can understand normal development up here, then we can understand what it's needed to take those stem cells and push them in the right direction, become the desired cell types we like. So we learn to take these stem cells and grow neurons, or we take these stem cells and grow cardiac muscle cells. So again, if we take a look at this, this is kind of showing you kind of human reproduction in a very generic sense. And so we've got an egg here, an ovum. Scientific name for egg is an ovum or ova, released by the ovary, kind of gets out into the fallopian tubes, the oviducts right through here. If fertilization is going to occur, it's going to occur within the oviducts, the fallopian tubes. So we've got sperm cells coming in here. They're going to fuse with the egg. So the sperm and egg fuse, sperm fertilizing the ovum here. And we're going to end up with this zygote. We're going to end up with this fertilized egg. It's going to divide very, very rapidly, still as it's passing down through the oviduct, the fallopian tubes. And so we're going to end up with a ball of cells. That ball of cells is going to kind of rearrange itself a little bit. And ultimately, we're going to have the structure over here, which is going to implant into the wall of the uterus. And so, pregnancy is going to occur when this structure here, this hollow ball cells called the blastocyst, implants into the wall of the uterus. And so that's showing us kind of that normal process. Again, these cells are going to be relatively unspecialized, relatively generic. So if we take a look at them, they're going to be those unspecialized cells that we're interested in studying. Now, those cells are going to continue to divide. The cells dividing and produce more mass. So we're going to get more and more cells present within this developing zygote, developing into an embryo. And so what we're going to see is that very, very quickly, they're going to start to differentiate. They're going to start to become specialized. So even though, again, if we said here, all of these cells are going to be unspecialized, implantation, occurring here kind of a week to 10 days after fertilization. These are going to be unspecialized cells. but they're going to continue to divide, getting bigger and bigger and bigger kind of structures, bigger clusters of cells, producing more mass here, but they're going to start to differentiate. So by about 8 weeks in utero, so many times before individuals are even aware they're pregnant, we're going to see kind of the development of these very primitive organs. And so we can start to see a heartbeat at about 3 weeks. We can see measurable brain waves, at least neurological activity at about 6 weeks. Not sure about cognition and things like that. But the basic organs are about 8 weeks, are produced and are in place about 8 weeks into the pregnancy, about 8 weeks after fertilization. And so what we can see then is that by about 24 to 26 weeks, about 2/3 of the way through the process, most pregnancies last 38 to 40 weeks, the babies are extremely premature, but are viable. And so we take a look at this going into their 3rd trimester, from months 7, 8, and 9. They're going to go from about 22 ounces and about 23 centimeters long to very rapid growth to what they're going to be when they're born. Still, they're going to have very, very primitive organs, especially when the lungs. So anybody that's known, somebody that's had a premature infant knows that the lungs are really the last of development. And they're also very concerning because, breathing is important to life. And so we need to have a way in which we can treat that. So if we take a look at this, again, as I said, normally the pregnancy lasts 38 to 40 weeks and 3 trimesters. So you go from this fertilized egg over here to a ball of undifferentiated cells to a newborn infant in basically 40 weeks. So rapid growth, rapid development. It's not completely developed. It'll continue to grow. It will continue to see maturation of the organs as they're going through, especially the brain and the spinal cord through the back. But it became very, very specialized very, very quickly. And if we can understand that process, we can understand what we need to do to start pushing these cells in the right direction, pushing these stem cells into the right direction to produce the cells that we need. Now, if we take a look at this, and again, the human body continues to change throughout the individual's lifetime. And so if you take a look at this, it's just scaling, kind of from the head, and then, kind of identifying kind of the different body parts. We can see that the baby's head tends to be very large in relationship to the body. It becomes progressively smaller as we go through at age 2, 5, and 15 on this. As you're going from kind of infant to the toddler to primary school into adolescence and puberty, what we're looking at here is continued growth of the cells, continued growth of the body, so continued differentiation, as well as increase of the cells producing more and more mass, which is giving us a pretty good idea about what's occurring normally within development. And so if we can understand what normally is occurring within development, we can then mimic that in the clinical setting or in the research setting to start to produce structures that we need for potentially treatment of human diseases. So that many of the effects of aging, if we take a look, from kind of a young adult kind of going through progressively older and older and older to an aged individual over here, what we can see is that this normal process of aging is pretty much associated with a decrease in the normal body's repair mechanisms. And so potentially we could offset some of the aging processes, again, if we understand how the repair mechanisms work and improve the repair mechanisms in these older individuals. So after this relatively quick view of taking a look at kind of normal development, kind of go back to these stem cell-like cells. Lots of work done on this, especially in the last 20 years, but in general, the adult cells that have stem cell-like properties are going to be relatively rare. One example of that are the cells within the bone marrow, where you've got a small percentage of cells, kind of like this progenitor cell here, that can continue to divide, produce more progenitor cells throughout an individual's lifetime, but they're also going to produce some cells that are going to be become specialized. They're going to become mature. So this is the generic cell over here that continues to divide over and over again throughout the individual lifetime. Some of those cells, though, aren't going to produce new progenitor cells. Some are going to start to become less generic and become specialized. So you get a specialized red blood cell here for, carrying oxygen throughout the body. Specialized as well here is a neutrophil, so it's involved with kind of the non-specific immune response to the body. And so this is going to be an example of a stem cell, which is found in the normal adults throughout the entire lifetime, and it continues to function in that way. Another example of adult stem cells, we talked about skin. Under most circumstances, if you're relatively young and you fall on a skateboard, your skin is going to heal relatively easily. If you're skateboarding in retirement, in your 60s and 70s, the skin is going to be less resistant to repairing itself. So again, some of that breakdown process. But we can see that we've got some skin cells that are going to be stem cells here. So skin stem cells sounds kind of rhymes all in there, but these cells will grow out and reestablish the surface of skin if we fall on our skateboard. Recent evidence shows that the heart has some stem cells that potentially can be stimulated to produce new heart muscle cells under the right circumstances. This is exciting, but we still don't understand enough about it to be able to get these cells from a patient, from a heart attack patient, and be able to repair their heart in that way. But it's an area of potential interest. And so with this kind of broad introduction to stem cells, what I'm going to talk about in the next half of this lecture is embryonic stem cells. So we're going to go from kind of a little bit exciting technology to kind of exciting, but kind of ethically I don't want to say challenging, but a lot of concerns associated with it. And so again, we'll come back and talk about embryonic stem cells on the second half of this lecture. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Thank you and have a great day.